Welcome to Burn the Ship. This is the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs with professionals that can help you go all in on your business. We talk to people that have walked the walk, talked the talk, been through all the things that we experience as entrepreneurs, and come out the other side with more skills and more knowledge and more expertise that they're willing to share with us to help us be successful business owners. So, thank you for your time. First of all, I appreciate it very much. Anybody that comes on the podcast to teach me something, to teach the audience something, to spend a little time with us, it means a lot, and I mean that. So, thank you for your time. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Okay, let's see where to begin. My name is Kat McCarthy, and people ask me often, what do I do? And my first response is as little as possible, because I kind of been doing the human doing route for so long that I'm more shifting into the who am I being and whatever I do. It's been an interesting journey. And it's funny that I fall in this category of entrepreneur because I don't really think of myself as that because I don't sell a thing. I'm not creating a consumable kind of item. However, I realized what I do is I am offering concepts and tools for self actualization based on my journey, what I've learned, a lot from my failures, and what the adversity can do to bring about more compassion, understanding, and keep a sense of curiosity alive. And I do a lot of things. I straddle a lot of different disciplines. I'll first, in a bird's eye view, I live in New York City. I'm from New Orleans originally, so I
Oh,
have
nice.
very deep lineage and roots in the South. And my mother was British, so I have this immigrant and I have sort of a mix of straddling different cultures, and that seems
Sure.
to be one of my gifts is integrating things from different disparate places and putting them together. So there's that. Um, I'm a storyteller by nature, a filmmaker. And it's so interesting when we look back on our lives of things, how it's so obvious how things led, but at the time you're kind of like chartering new territory and figuring out what am I doing? So that question of like, who am I and what am I doing, I think is always going to be present because that's what somewhat fuels my journey. So I moved to New York to go to graduate film school at NYU, and that's what brought me up here for over 3 decades. And what has occurred in the wake of all that remains to be seen, but has been quite entertaining nonetheless.
Sure.
So yeah, there's a lot I can say, but I don't want to overwhelm you with who I am and what I do because there's so much stuff I can tell kind of as I share, if that makes
Sure. So, tell me this, like the thought process into getting into your own business, right? Because um, taking what you just told me, right, at face value about your personality and your background, it seems like the inspiration for your business is very is kind of what you said. It's very present, right? It's taking what's going on around you and experiences that you have with people and learning how to solve those problems based on things that you find interesting or gratifying. So tell me, from looking from the outside, like what was that catalyst for like, okay, I'm going to kind of start my own thing and I'm going to make it work.
Great question. I'm not sure I know the answer, but I'll give it a shot because the environment in which I was raised was very freelance, unconventional. My mother was an artist and we always made things. So I think the focus was less on consuming and more on creating. There's that. I also wasn't raised in an environment where I had this expected tract of what I was going to follow. And in fifth grade, I was introduced to filmmaking. I had a
Mhm.
really out of the box type of teacher and who with whom I'm still in touch. And we did things that were not traditional and just a whole new way of learning. Because for me, if it's fun and I can sort of use all of my faculties in the process, then I'm fully engaged, as opposed to the type of educational learning of you learn something, you memorize it, you say it back. That to me doesn't involve any of the processing. So I've had this environment around me where I guess it was like, sure, go out and create your own thing. And working freelance, which I've done my whole life, has its ups and its downs. It's feast or famine. Either
Mm,
I'm fully engaged in something and I have no life and I can't make those doctor's appointments that I made 6 months ago, or I have all the time in the world. And the joke in the film business is when you want to get another job, just plan a vacation and inevitably
yeah.
something will show up, right? So there was never a safety net. And I think that in some ways, that's been really scary and exciting at the same time. So, yeah, I think it just was part of my DNA and the epigenetics of the environment in which I was raised.
Sure.
And I guess I have kept doing it until it doesn't work anymore, but it seems to keep working. So
Yeah.
I morph and I pivot and I shift because I'm constantly evolving. And therefore, whatever it is that I am interested in and offering is going to be constantly upgrading to the most present operating system, if you will.
Sure. Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. I have kind of a two-part question as well. Is like what is the process for finding out what you're offering, right? For you, right? And this is completely personal, right? Because if it's this is what I'm interested in and I want to bring that to other people, that is something that I can absolutely relate with, right? And the second part of that question is how do you know what to focus on, right? Like are you one of those people that is always focused on the creative side of things and maximizing your creative potential and turning and kind of applying that to your business, or do you kind of reverse engineer that where you see the needs of people around you and decide, okay, maybe that solution is something that would interest me. Let me figure out how to kind of tie myself into this ecosystem.
Huh. My gut says it's the first.
Mm,
Um, I I think one of my strengths is that I am willing to be vulnerable and share everything that I go through, not to air dirty laundry, but to show what it is I've learned from it. So as a filmmaker, it's storytelling about, I love family dynamics. I love relationships. I love all the way that we actually communicate nonverbally, and things we don't communicate are just as powerful as the things we do. So whether in the film business or I then, because of Hurricane Katrina and going back to New Orleans, I started helping with the rebuilding of the community through yoga. It was something that I was doing as like a hobby on the side. And the ironic thing, and I'm just realizing this now, so this is all
mm,
kind of coming through right now. I did a TV show called Trauma Life in the ER, which was a documentary series nominated for an Emmy. It was a really interesting show that I kind of in documentary world, I get access to worlds that I have not earned the access to, but I get to peer in and go on people's journeys. So there's that.
right.
Then 9/11 happened in New York, which is a traumatic event. Then Katrina. And so all these various things that have happened on in a external way have impacted me to figure out tools in order to process, navigate, wrap my head around unprecedented situations that I think we all share, whether it's a local,
Yeah.
regional, or worldwide, like the pandemic.
Yeah.
Then I have, and so then in the yoga community and being a yoga educator and a trainer, it's really helping people rewrite their narrative of what is going on in their lives and how do I want to participate with it, not as a victim, but as someone who is like taking something that is new, unfamiliar, and figuring out how to be with it. And who do I want to be when I come off of my yoga mat? Am I still going to be like dealing with stress and angry with road rage and traffic, or can I find a way to be with what life throws my way, right? In a agency, sense of agency. To me, that's really important to have choice. And so I personally have had a lot of trauma that happened with its divorce, my mother being diagnosed with cancer, the demise of her very quickly in the middle of my cancer diagnosis. I mean, like I had a lot of stuff that happened all at once. And instead of being stopped in my tracks, and it's humbling, I have to say, it's not something I would wish on anyone to happen in such a short period of time. But through that, transformation happens. Through that, I learn where is my strength? What is important to me? Whether it's a pandemic or whether it's something that happens personally in our family, how can I maintain such self-trust, self-connection to really have that belief in myself? So those things also informed me. And in my yoga travels, I was traveling internationally. I was also teaching nonviolent communication or compassionate communication courses. So it's realizing where we habitually go physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. We live in all these bodies. And are those conditioned habits still working for me, or can I upgrade them? Can I shift them? Can I break them down? So in all of the external traumas, internal traumas, and chronic things that have happened since childhood, which we all have, which will be the next phase of what I kind of got to, all of these things have helped me with more tools in really appreciating, this is going to sound silly, but turning crap into manure, into
Right.
fertilized material,
Yeah.
so that I metabolize it, I move it through.
Yeah.
And the pandemic happens. I was traveling internationally. I was actually in Japan for the first 3 months of it, where actually is where the pandemic that ship came into
Sure.
Yokohama. Anyway, I was there and came back to New York, and I was grounded, couldn't go anywhere. All my work, everything dissipated. So once again, no safety net. What am I going to do? How am I going to pivot? And rather than falling apart, which I do fall apart, that's not this, but I use the breakdown as a breakthrough. And I know that sounds Pollyanna, and I'm looking at it from the other end of it. Being in the middle of it is really uncomfortable and it sucks. I just want you to know
Sure.
that, right? But I started studying with someone whose books I had read because in my recovery from breast cancer, the physical stuff from all my yoga training, all of my embodiment awareness was easy. It was the emotional and mental denouement, the unpacking of all of that as to why might I have been a hospitable environment for malignancy. So this doctor named Dr. Gabor Mate wrote a book called When the Body Says No. And it's all about the emotional and mental origins of physical disease. So like people pleasers tend to have autoimmune issues. If you have cancer in your body, it's likely there is unexpressed anger. There's something festering that has not come out. And going back to my upbringing, I see it all, right? But
Yeah.
didn't realize how much is being stored somatically in my body. So I started during the pandemic learning worldwide with other people who were in different countries. We're all going through this collective uh, loss, if you will, and became certified in a trauma-informed somatic approach to therapy. So instead of traveling around the world, I was doing so much internal work that I actually had to stay put and had to process and digest things. Because if you think about like a snake digesting, it's not moving around, it has to be still. And that all that internal shifting happens when there's this outward stillness, but so much movement happening. And through all of that, I work one-on-one with people. I work with couples. I work with families. I teach and facilitate trainings. I do so many different things, which is to me really exciting because I love the fact that it's not just one thing that I'm doing over and over, but I take from all these different disciplines and put them together and offer them so people have like this toolkit of like, okay, this is what's going on. Let me use this tool and practice it in hopefully a safe space, a relational container where I'm in a self-regulated part of my nervous system so I can help co-regulate so that people can look at themselves that can be scary, but have more compassion and curiosity. So that's a very
Well,
long-winded answer to your question. I'm not even sure I even touched it.
no, and it really is, and I have kind of a follow up question to that, right? Like you talked about at the beginning, like going back to something that you said early on was you spend a lot more time these days um, processing why you do something and who that makes you, the impact that that has on you as a human, opposed to spending all of your time picking apart what you're doing, right? Do you think that um, that type of cognition of who am I and why am I doing this thing is something that is earned by putting in the time and effort to understand what you're offering, and you're being sort of that master in your discipline? Or do you think that as an entrepreneur you can begin that entrepreneurial journey by spending a lot of time thinking about why you do something and who that makes you, that you render that service to the people that you're working with?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. Um, I think my journey hopefully can create a fast track for people, because everyone has their own path to follow. Mine happens to be mine, and
Right.
I've learned the lessons I am to learn, and there's always going to be more lessons. Like I'm pretty amazed by how far in life I've gotten on a very old belief system that was created from a young child, and it still works until it doesn't.
Right.
And I can't wait in a year from now to look back and be like, oh my God, how did I not know that? For what
Right.
I know now, right? So I think what it is that excites me, that I think is available for anyone, is the process, first of all, of learning and realizing that we're all doing the best we can with the tools that we have. And what we have done thus far has worked. The question is, does it still work? And can I continually be learning about myself so that I have a, so I am accumulating, if you will, qualitative experiences, not
Right.
quantitative stuff,
Right.
you know? So I think, and this is just my opinion and a lot of the conversations I'm having with people at the moment, that we're at a pivotal point in the world right now where there's a lot of polarization. There's no real understanding or interest to understand where someone's coming from. And I remember the Dalai Lama came to New Orleans it was maybe about 10 or 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And he said something which I thought was really powerful. He said, what if the next inhale, the moment that you can next breathe, and if you don't do this, you will never take your next inhale. What if your inhale was dependent on understanding where someone else was coming from? You don't have to agree. It's not agreement, it's understanding. That would be incentive for people to really want to understand. I see where you're coming from. I understand that. I have a different way of approaching it, but I can see that you're trying to meet a need by doing X, Y, and Z. Whether it's someone you work with, whether it's someone in your family, your partner, your children, your parents. I think that that is a powerful refocusing, that we're all trying to meet a need. And if we
Sure.
can communicate on that level, not the strategies to get the needs met, which is where conflict happens. If we can meet at that deeper level, I think our communication and our connection as sentient beings is so direct and simple.
Yeah,
Not
I
easy
agree.
because it goes
I
against
agree.
all of my conditioning.
I agree. And it's definitely not easy. And here's something um from my perspective for you, right? One of the things that I find most interesting about you as a person is how atypical your learning process has been when it comes to your business and your life in general, right? Because a lot of what you hear and a lot of what I heard early on, and my background being like, for 15 years I wanted to go play in the NBA, right? So like I had a very singular focus for a really really long time in my life. But what you hear a lot is like, put in your 10,000 hours, like become a master, be specific at this one thing. And that seems to be an approach, maybe that you haven't rejected, but just something that you haven't taken as gospel, where really you've kind of looked at things from a broader view, right? Where I wanted to be as specific as possible about learning this one thing so that I could be really good at it. It seems to me like you've taken a broader approach. Like, I want to be really good at this one thing. I want to become a master at this one thing. And it's just a becoming a master of understanding and connecting with people, right? So, like, if you're applying that rationale to the 5, 10, 20, a million different things that you want to learn over the time that we're allotted on this earth, I think that is a wise use of your time, because it applies to that one singular thing of, like, I just want a better human understanding of the people that live around me, right? And I think that that's brilliant, right? And the reason is because you get a lot of information from a lot of different directions, right? Like, you find a way to solve problems for people that may all be related in a bunch of different ways, which is a very unique thing. So for the people listening, um, I encourage you to look at that 30,000-foot view of why you do what you do, because I don't think that I've done that in a while until we had our conversation on the phone, right? Because when you ask you what you do and you're like, hey, I'm only giving you one sentence to tell me what you do, right? It's not, I'm really good at this discipline, or I'm a very technical filmmaker, or what, it's, I listen to people and I understand where they're at and I try to make it a little bit better, right? Like, and maybe that the solution that applies to that is 10 or 15 or 20, or, like I said, a million different things. You never know what you want to learn in this life that we get is completely up to you, right? And so make the most out of it on your terms is I guess what I'm saying to the audience. My question related to that is, even though I find that so interesting, do you feel that the diversification of your thoughts sometimes impedes your progress towards what you want, toward what your goals are?
Absolutely. Welcome to my life. Um, First of all, I was very much on a tracked film. I'm going to direct, I'm going to produce, I'm going to do the. And I did it. I did it. And you could say I was successful. But then I started changing my definition of what is success.
Right.
Is it successful because I need to be seen and I need to be known because that was something that I didn't have in my upbringing? Or was it because I can't not tell a story? Like, this is something that I can't not do, right? So I think that what maybe happens for me is I get to a point where I've learned enough about something that I feel satiated. And then I kind of uh, put it all together and offer it. And then
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm hungry again. What else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe what it is that 10,000 hours, because I've practiced yoga for 30 years and I'm still amazed by how little I know, and how the more I know, the more I know I don't know. So there's that, because I'm never going to satiate it all. But maybe it's that, as you said, a broader perspective of how am I going to take all these hours of experience and not look at them as like, oh, that's something I did, or that's something I'm not interested in, but how to actually take all the gold or the gems along the way and be able to apply these particular muscles in a completely different discipline. But it's still the same. I guess I put in those hours unbeknownst to me at the time.
Right.
And yes, I hope I live long enough that I can read all the books on my shelf that I still have yet to read. I have more languages I still want to learn. There's so much. I have a Netflix series I want to write. I have all sorts of ideas and concepts and books. I have so many things that I would love to do, that I would love to have the opportunity to be able to focus and do all these things. So yes, it does paralyze me at times. Like, what shall I focus on? And at the same time, it's never dull. There's always
Right.
some new thing. And because I have had the luxury and the support, having a mother from another country, we did a lot of traveling ever since I was little. So part of my things that excite me is going to new cultures, learning new languages, having new food, and understanding what makes people tick in different cultures. So that when I'm teaching or presenting or offering something, I'm able to meet people where they are. Because I think ultimately we all just want to be accepted and met where we are and be seen and be heard. And I'm a space holder for that in some ways. And I find that really a really fun challenge.
Um,
And I don't even think I answered your question. So
no, you did. No,
please
you
repeat
did.
it if not.
Just no, you did, just in a different way, right? Because the way that you answered it kind of presents it like a double-edged sword, right? Where yes, it hinders your ability from time to time. Maybe one, and I'm kind of giving you this from my perspective, right? Where it would probably hinder my ability to focus a little bit, and um, I would struggle with replicating the things that I need to do on a daily basis to make my day feel successful with that wide periphery of vision of all of these different things that I need to do, right? But on the other hand, um, it's like the vaccine for monotony. You know what I mean? It's like the thing that keeps you willing to continue to fight that fight of continuous learning and offerings and engaging with people and all of the things that take a lot of time and energy from who we are as humans, right? And I think that those things are equally powerful, and one can be more powerful to whichever you give more power, right? So like if it's more important to you to have that thing that motivates you to keep doing what you're doing, to find different things and keep connecting with people, that is the more important thing. And if it hinders you more than it helps you, you are that person that is motivated by whatever outside or internal factors. Maybe it's more of a hindrance to you to have a wide vision of all of these different things that you can offer to people in order to kind of um, try and diagnose whatever thing that you are helping people with. You know what I mean? And I don't know, from my own, looking internally, I can see at different points in my life where one of those things could be more true than the other. But right now, I don't know that either of those things is true, right? Like I am an addict of progress. And I think a lot of people that are paying attention to the podcast can probably relate to that, right? Like, a few years ago, I started playing pool and I got pretty good at pool. So I picked up golf. You know what I mean? Like find something equally as difficult that there is no shortcut to, that you genuinely just have to hit enough golf balls to try and figure out something that you can do that's replicable, that makes you play golf at the level that you expect yourself to play golf at, right? And I think you can apply that same thought to your business. It's if you are someone that is constantly addicted to progress, right? Is finding that thing that you can continue to improve and improve and improve at, then your perspective on business is super powerful, right? It gives you the ability to literally make your business take whatever shape you want based on the continuous learning that you are willing to do. And again, I mean, on the other side of that, the opposite could be true as well, right? Like if you are someone that only wants to see that progress in one thing, or maybe you're one of those people that wants to get to the 99.9 percentile of that one thing before you put it down and pick something else up, jumping around to different stuff's not going to help you. You know what I mean? So it reinforces the idea of something you said at the beginning of the podcast, where everybody kind of has their own way. Everybody's brain works a little bit differently, and it's all rooted in different things that we've experienced in our life and the way that we were raised, right? And so I think that there's no right answer really to the questions that we're asking, right? It's hopefully this conversation inspires you to look internally, if you were the person listening to this podcast, and say where, in all of these different solutions that work for different people, is the one that works for me. You know what I mean? So I think all perspective is good perspective. And I
And
appreciate your perspective. So,
yeah, I think that the answer a lot for me is it depends.
right. And
Context,
it should.
right? And it should. Everyone has different proclivities, and I'm not saying that my way is the right way. It just happens to be the way that works for me. And helping people find their own way that's true to them is really the path of self-actualization, right? Self-discovery. And the biggest question I think I have, for you is how do you measure what success is? What is success to you? right? Everyone's going to have a different definition to that or answer. I'm just,
Yeah, for sure.
how would you
Yeah.
define success?
Um, I don't know. It changes every day for me, right? Because I have two young children, right? Like um, a not successful day turns into a day that I'm really happy with really fast when I get home and see those two. You know what I mean? So that definition changes over time too, and it kind of goes against what I'm about to say. But one of the things that I've learned to be valuable for me in reference of your definition of success is not continuing to slide that bar further away from yourself. Right? Is you know I want to get to this goal, right? And then I get to this goal and I realize that it's just not good enough and I slide that success bar further away, right? And what that does is it creates this contingent cycle of never being happy, right? Like whether you define yourself as successful or not successful right now is irrelevant to the fact that you should be happy where you are because the journey is what there is to appreciate. So I think that is what 8 years of payments and video and podcasting and all these other things that are super freaking difficult have taught me is that it pays to be happy where you are, right? Even if you want to be somewhere else, make peace with the place that you are at so that you can make peace with the road to get where you want to go, right? And so knowing your definition of success is going to change over time, and merging that with the idea that you can be happy with who you are right now is probably the healthiest way I can think to be a salesperson or an entrepreneur. And that has taken me a long time to kind of get to that place. You know what I mean? And it took sales has a way of tearing you down and then helping you build that self confidence from a very, very organic place, right? Like you have to go do stuff that's really hard and get it to go your way for you to believe, oh, this is something that I can do and I can be really good at. So it kind of changes and rewires some of those connections in your brain that make you think of whether you are successful or worthy or unworthy or all of those things that we deal with. And so again, I think what your definition of success is completely independent to who you are and where you are in life, and it's going to change. Just don't change it on a daily basis. Don't decide, okay, I hit this goal, but I should have set my goal higher, and there's no point in being happy right now. That it's a very difficult cycle to land yourself in, right? I did 4 deals last month. Well, that was my goal, but I really should have did 6, right?
Well,
Or
I guess the question then, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, you're not. Go ahead.
Is how do we measure success, right?
Right.
You used a word, I don't know if you realize it, which is what you value.
Hmm.
And so when I'm focusing on my values or my needs, I'm less concerned of how they're going to manifest, but the fact that that's my North Star.
Right.
Because how do we measure something that is qualitative? We measure in the quantitative, we measure in money, we measure in all sorts of things that are agreed upon, but it's very hard to measure. And for me, one of my biggest definitions of success is, am I comfortable in my own skin? Am I self-connected right now? Because then I'm not looking outside of myself for any measurement. It's all inner based. And I think that's true for a lot of like artists and creative types, because they may never feel like they're successful because they may never feel like they're actually getting to what it is that they're trying to get to inside.
Right.
Even on the outside, it might appear very, lots of accolades. And I've had a lot of external success in my life. And and it's wonderful because it's lovely to get validation. But if I'm measuring my sense of self-worth based on what other people think of me, then I'm almost like reliant upon them to tell me whether
Right.
I have value or not. And
Right.
I think having tools to determine how you measure success for yourself is so much more powerful, because it doesn't matter what you do in life as your vocation or your job, or like, how are you being as a parent? How are you being as a partner? How are you being as a fellow human? That to me is so much more memorable and effective in modeling and teaching people, as opposed to,
Right.
well, I say this, therefore you should do it.
Right.
right? Yeah.
I agree.
And
I agree.
during the pandemic, I with some other nonviolent communication facilitators, we created a podcast called The Upside of Over.
Mhm.
And it's all about the benefit of endings and how we end something is going to create the foundation for what's next to come. And one of the episodes was the upside of uncertainty. And I love this idea because during the pandemic, everything was kind of up in the air and it was really scary. It was uncertain. And at the same time, my whole life has had that uncertainty. And therefore, do I want to hold on to something and grasp to, let's say I'm in an ocean and there's no boats, there's no land. I'm just kind of floating. Luckily, I have my floaties on because I have some tools that I've acquired in my life. Do I hold on to the buoy and hope that this will hold me through until I get rescued or until I get seen or whatever? Or can I turn to the whole ocean and be like, wow, look at this expansive opportunity? It's scary.
Yeah.
Freedom is scary, right? But it's
Oh yeah.
exciting. So I like to call it exciting.
Yeah.
It's anxious, provoking, and at the same time, there's so much possibility. And again, I sometimes have to like be a cheerleader to myself to remind that because I do get bogged down by things. I do get frustrated by challenges. But what if the obstacles are the path?
Right.
What if it's the obstacles that is really the rub, the friction that helps us shift and transform and learn and become a more um, dimensional version of ourselves?
Sure.
And so, in some ways, being comfortable in my own skin is one definition. Another one is being the truest version of who I am.
Right.
And I don't even necessarily know what the end point is because it's a process and there's no destination. It's the journey.
Right.
And,
Right.
and I know that that sounds like a Hallmark card and I get it and it sounds like a great idea, but how do you actually put that into practice? That is, you know, that,
Yeah.
that's the whole point, I think,
Yeah.
overall.
No, I think so too. And if you measure your value of your life on um achieving this one goal, what do you do when you achieve that one goal? Right? It's like it kind of has to be a moving target, right? And I think a lot of what you're saying is exactly what goes through people's mind in a lot of life changing experiences, and it's very hard for people, especially men, to articulate, right? And so, my question is like, if people in the audience they want to have a conversation with you, they want to buy something from you, they want to pick your brain, how do they get in touch with you? How do people find you?
Um, Good question. And if you give me screen sharing, I don't know if it helps to pop up my contact info, but
Yeah, if you
I
want.
have a website, which is catmccarthyyoga.com.
Mm.
Um, just
We'll put it in the
we'll
video.
put that in.
Well, they're looking at it right now, so
Okay, perfect. Um, it is it's not it's a bit antiquated. It got hit by a bot. It's getting upgraded. I have a whole new brand, a whole new vision, all that stuff. But at least that's one way to find me because I'm also on Facebook as Cat McCarthy Yoga. I'm on Instagram, Cat McCarthy Yoga. And it's cat with a C. I know it's spelled
Mhm.
different ways, right? I have a podcast, The Upside of Over, and I'm also a certified compassionate inquiry therapist, and on a website under the umbrella of this particular my teacher, Dr. Gabor Mate. And there are ways to reach me in that sort of old school way, and I'm in the midst of sort of trying to reinvent how my next chapter is going to go.
Sure.
And the exciting thing again is I don't know, and the scary thing is I don't know.
Yeah.
But I am offering an array from whether it's teaching trainings online or in person, which I've done for many, many years, with which involves a lot of humor, because again, if it's not fun to learn, I don't really want to do it. But this being human is highly entertaining. The things we do, I just 24/7 entertainment as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned myself.
Yeah.
And I also have sessions with people through Zoom, online sessions that are in more of a therapeutic type of setting. And I also still have my creative juices going with having some other podcasts that I want to do, have some documentary and also some narrative comedies. I want to get back to some of those roots. And it's just a matter of finding the right sources, and because I have a lot of resources, but sources of funding and support for those kind of bigger things. But I'm accessible. I am available, and I think to me that's the biggest thing that I bring to the table is my vulnerability and my being completely open about the challenges that I've gone through and what I've learned, and hopefully can hold a non-judgmental space in which someone can actually process something without being alone in whatever
Right.
it is. Because I think one of the deepest traumas that we all have that go back to not intentionally at all by our caregivers, but people's lack of tools from certain generations passed on. We 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 often have to choose between, when we're younger, attachment to our caregivers and the sense of authenticity of our.
Right.
And if our attachment to our caregivers, if authenticity affects that, we're going to choose the attachment and therefore disconnect from ourselves, our true selves, because that's how we survive. And it makes perfect sense. And it's the smartest choice.
Yeah.
Question is, how can you have both?
Right.
And so therefore, being able to, when a disconnect happens in relationship with people, then then reconnection can happen again in a relational field. And that's what I offer. I hold space in in the biggest sense. I hold space for people to explore and look at themselves and be an ally on their journey, whether it's actors and we're writing characters for a film, whether it's documentary subjects and people who are sharing their story, whether it's people on a yoga mat, we're in a training and we're exploring some philosophical idea and threading it into the physical practice of asana and meditation and self-study, or whether it's working one-on-one with people in a therapeutic realm. So maybe you could answer better than anyone at this point. What is it that I do?
No, and
I'm not quite sure anymore.
I think there's a benefit to not having a good answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Truthfully, I mean, um, why do we agonize over being able to answer that question? Right.
Right.
That's the question that I pose there. Why do we agonize over being able to answer that question? Right. Because the hope I think is that we land business by telling someone this is who I am and this is what I do. But I can tell you from the perspective of someone that has been in an industry for a really, really long time that is completely contingent on the depth and energy that you put into your relationships, that it doesn't matter how well you answer that question, right? It really doesn't. You could do 100 things, or you can do one things, or you can do nothing, right? But the quality of the relationships that you have and the way that you care for the people around you are going to be much more indicative of your level of perceived success than any 10,000 hours that you can spend in one discipline. So I'd rather not put a title on the things that you do and just enjoy the fact that I'm connected with you, if that's fair enough.
I so appreciate your answer, because it goes back to, it doesn't matter what I do, it's who am I being and whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
And I think that there's a lot of benefit of, as you said, focusing on the relationships, which is what I've done in a variety of disciplines.
Sure.
That to me is that has the longevity, that has the qualitativeness to it, right? Not something that is acquired from outside. It's something that we generate within.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a very enlightened perspective. That is that's very unique. It's very unique. It truthfully is. Well, I look forward to seeing how things progress for you. And if there is any benefit to your goals that myself or my network can be, please lean on me. I would love to help you further any of those things that you want to do. But talking to you has been refreshing.
Mm.
Um, I enjoy these conversations in which we do not look at entrepreneurship from a profit and loss perspective, right? And more of the benefit that it has to you, as the benefit that it has to you as a person, right? And how you feel about yourself, because really that's what we're here for, right? Owning a business or being an entrepreneur is just another tool for you to be able to make of life what you want to make, right? And I think that's what we're all here to do, is to let our experiences guide us to what we want our life to be, and then find some form or method or plan of action to attack that one thing. And so I leverage the same thing to my audience. If there is any benefit to your goals and your journey that I can be, or the people within my network can be, please reach out to me. I would love to connect those people. Connecting people, I think, is one of the most beneficial things that you can do, both from a personal and a business perspective, is growing that tribe of people that like and know and trust you. So, Kat, I appreciate your time very much. It means a lot to me, and I really enjoyed this conversation and the questions that we've asked from a semi hypothetical perspective. But I think if you take some of these things and listen to them a couple of times, you can apply some things that will put you in a lot better headspace to run and be a successful business owner, which is the whole goal of this podcast. So if you have anything to leave the people with, any words of summation or anything that you want to leave that is lasting to the audience, please go ahead. This platform is yours. But I think I've asked the questions that I wanted to ask to understand how people can burn the ship.
Thank you for welcoming me into your creative endeavor that you're doing. And it's also really refreshing to hear about entrepreneurship in a different way, because I do think we get stuck in a binary of profit and loss. And what if the loss is actually more beneficial than profit in the long
Right.
term, so that it actually becomes win-win? Right? It open up that binary. And I don't think of myself as a business person per se, because I've had absolutely no training formally in that. But what I'm appreciating that you're sharing is the spirit of it is ultimately going to be what fuels things and continues on, that has so much more value in the long run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
It does, especially if you use it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you use it. Well, I appreciate you very
Everything's an
much.
opportunity, right? We just
Yeah, it
have to,
really is.
how can we shift looking at what might be a problem into an amazing opportunity to learn? So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Well, I look forward to doing this again. Please reach out to me. I'll reach out to you as we edit this and put it out there to the world to see. So, thank you. We'll talk again soon. Okay.
Thank you so much, Bailey. It was wonderful spending time
Yeah,
with you. All
always.
right.
All right. Burn the ship.